City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting of the 15th of June 2021. I declare this meeting open at 9 a.m. and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and their elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to advise meeting attendees that this meeting is being webcasted and audio recorded. As the Local Government and Committee Meeting Code does not have provisions for the recording of confidential discussions at this time, a motion must be resolved before we can proceed with confidential audio recording. I note that the proposed motion will be as follows, and it is on the screen. Is there a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Bradley, seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I've missed apologies, I'll come back to them. That is carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Heremiah is absent, and I will do apologies and leaves of absence now. I note that we've received a leave of absence from Councillor Mindy Russell due to medical leave and Mayor Darren Power due to personal leave. Are there any further leaves of absence to consider? Noting that Councillor Heremiah is trying to connect, he's just on the other side of that TV screen. Can someone please move that we provide a leave of absence in accordance with section 5.3C3 of the Local Government and Committee Meeting Code for Councillors Russell and Power? Thank you, Councillor Bradley, seconded by Councillor Hall. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll get stuck straight into the good stuff, which is item 4.1, report for the Advocacy Strategy from 2021 to 2024. Before I move into discussions, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare? There being none, I'll now refer to the Director of City Information and Transformation, Dr. Scott Burke, to begin public discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'm going to defer to my Program Leader, Kirsten.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The new advocacy strategy has been the outcome of nearly 18 months' work by the advocacy program team. As I'm only a recent appointee into the role of program leader, I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the contribution and the work of the former program leader, Bridget Rogan, the acting program leader, at one point, Carmen Panisi, our principal advocacy advisor, Natalie De Faveri, and also as Senior Research Officer, Joanne Thompson, all of who have been integral to putting together this strategy. I'd also like to acknowledge the support of our Director, Dr. Scott Burke, in facilitating the development of this strategy. The strategy has also been the subject of significant internal consultation and contributions. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the executive leadership team, managers and program leaders for their contributions. And I'd also like to thank councillors for their contributions, in particular their work at a workshop last year that identified the strategic priorities for council. The advocacy strategy explains what advocacy is and why it is important for council. It will link with the new corporate strategy, in particular Focus Area 7, High Performing Organisation, and 7.7, advocate to state and federal government to support projects, policies and programs that will deliver lasting, positive change for the city. It includes 9 priorities that have been previously endorsed by Council across several focus areas, including healthy, connected community, economy and growth, and infrastructure. The advocacy strategy references that we will be putting in place an advocacy action plan once council has endorsed the strategy, and the advocacy program team will be working with internal stakeholders on identifying actions to achieve the priorities identified in the strategy. We also recognise that circumstances change and that we will need to be agile in adapting to those changed circumstances, both to identify and include additional strategic priorities and where necessary, and to recognise when we've achieved significant milestones for identified priorities, thereby enabling us to focus our efforts on different areas. The strategy also references the fact that we will be regularly reporting to Council on the Advocacy Action Plan and will be undertaking regular monitoring and review of the outcomes of the strategy. This report includes a summary of the previous year's work of the advocacy program, and in future years the AAP will be used as the basis for monitoring and review, including quarterly and annual reports. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Kirsten. I have questions from Councillor Kransky and Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. Through the Chair, less a question and more just a statement for my colleagues, if I may. I'd like to draw your attention to page 5 of the committee report under the heading of background information. The second paragraph, the last sentence reads, Council's previous advocacy agenda was directly linked to investment in the following areas, and they include establishment of the Yarra-Bilba Family and Community Place, and early delivery of the Yarra-Bilba High School. I'd like this to go on public record to say that I believe this statement is disingenuous, it's false and it's misleading. And I'll take a moment to elaborate on that, if I may, through the Chair. On at least 2 occasions where all councillors have been present during budget deliberations last year and during the recent report that was presented to us by way of briefings, I raised the issue of these 2 projects not being actively supported by Council's Advocacy Department and by Council, and asked them to be removed from the background papers. They remain in the background papers. So, councillors, I can provide you with greater detail, but I'll just focus for the moment, if I may, on the ordinary council meeting on the 29th of August 2017. Now, at that meeting, despite the Yarra-Bilba High School being one of the advocacy priorities, which you can actually reach on page 21 of 176 in the previous advocacy strategy, the then advocacy team leader put together some words for councillors for me, which read, I request the Mayor on behalf of Logan City Council and residents write to the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk, the Honourable Jackie Trad, and the Honourable Kate Jones and Mr Linus Power requesting Yarra-Bilba's First State High Schools open to students by the commencement of the school year 2019. That actually went up to committee for a committee vote, and that vote was lost. It was supported by Darren Power, who seconded the motion. The councillors did not support that, despite it being a key advocacy principle, and that never occurred. So in the past week, I had the opportunity actually to catch up with the State MP, Linus Power, who congratulated me on my outstanding advocacy work with regard to having the high school opened and brought forward earlier in Yarra-Bilba. As you all know, it did open in 2020. And we were also supported through the advocacy campaign by a grassroots community association who got out there and door knocked and supported the local residents. Now, I have actually got a second agenda item on here, which is the early years. I won't talk about it in that forum, but what I can tell you is that the early years program also had a number of bumps in the road. Those issues were highlighted with the then CEO about issues pertaining to the advocacy department and their management of that particular program, and those issues were passed on to others for further investigation and review. If anyone requires any background information, I'm very happy to provide that to you. But whilst I acknowledge today is about moving forward and not looking back, I would have liked the record to have been corrected for today. But I won't be able to support this project today going up, this report going up, simply by virtue of the fact that I've addressed this on multiple times and it remains on record. I have nothing more to add.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. The directors offered, and I've just checked with the meeting service officers, to remove the 2 dot points that refer to those items as an admin change, so that when it comes up to full council, it won't be a recommendation that includes those. So are you comfortable with that?
To be clear, I had requested in budget deliberations and in the briefing prior, so I'll believe it when I see it, but that would be great.
Okay, thank you. We'll make those changes. Wait. That would be fantastic. So we'll put it in the resolution as an amendment to the motion.
I would greatly appreciate that. You know, history is made by those who write it, Councillor Raven.
Thank you. Hopefully we're writing history right now. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. Through the Chair, Councillor Raven, thank you for that. I just want to highlight on page 8, which refers to priorities identified with the new Advocacy Strategy 2021-2024. And it actually refers to centres, master plans and summit implementation plans, one being Springwood. And I did last year highlight that last term Springwood was a big focus. For some reason it's slipped off the radar this term, and I was told very strongly in a meeting which was minuted that Springwood would not be included. So I'm just wondering how and where is Springwood in here, please?
Thank you, Councillor Bradley.
Word.
The priorities that are included in the strategy are the priorities that were endorsed by Council. So we act on the advice of Council and on the endorsed position of Council. And as I said, the Council can update and amend strategic priorities as circumstances change. So if that becomes a strategic priority endorsed by Council, then we include it. But I also think that there are some particular aspects of priorities that are citywide, one of which is the digital infrastructure, and the second of which is the CoLab, which is really about a citywide economic development, as well as, say, the Southern Gateway motorway. So while there may not be specific priorities for each particular area of Logan, there are priorities which are there to contribute to the whole of the city.
Thank you so much for stating that publicly on the record. I really do appreciate that. As you know, there is major work going on in Springwood with the M1 at the busway, the V1 going through. There is major development happening in Springwood. Literally at the moment, the Springwood Health Hub is actually that is very distracting, just saying. I'm not sure if the sound can be turned off. That
we're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and the Springwood Health Hub is actually physically about to happen on the ground. In my time as a councillor over 13 years, Beenleigh has got a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars of money. Logan Central has got lots and lots of money. And for some reason, last term, yes, Springwood was a focus, but for some reason this term it seems to not be. So I just want it on the record that it is actually inaccurate referring to Springwood there when you're not actually focusing on Springwood, and I will be voting against this item purely for that reason.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. That page is just referring to the policies that are linked to the strategy. So the Springwood Master Plan and Summit Implementation Plan is just part of that whole centres package. It's just a list of policies.
Yeah, that's right. It's just words.
Well, it's all just words, but okay. Understood. Councillor Wilcox and Councillor Kransky, who promises to be nice this time.
Thank you. I just want to draw your attention to page 42. So with Inland Rail, you have it in here that to date officers have observed or participated in more than 20 meetings involving ARTC officials. Just wondering when you're attending these, because obviously as councillors we don't get invited to all of these meetings. We only really attend the CCC meetings as an observer. We generally don't attend meetings here because they're of a technical stature. So wondering, because some of us have a particular interest in Inland Rail and we're trying to advocate best for our residents, the last CCC meeting we actually got minutes, which was great because that one I actually couldn't attend. So I would really appreciate minutes when officers are attending these ARTC meetings so that I'm abreast of what's been said and what's going on and all the rest of it.
We can certainly provide you with that, Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. And just on another point, on page 38, with the Rosia Park Multisport and Recreation Precinct, 2 points. It still has that...
Just be mindful that some of that is subject to budget considerations.
Yep. So it still has in there that it's providing a regional facility for AFL. I thought we were... Okay, so can we, I don't know if we can adjust it in there. And then the other one actually is rather interesting for me because I do sports. You've actually got there to meet an identified need in Logan for triathlon at Rosia Park Multisport. Not sure how we can do triathlon at this venue when it's a wheeled sports venue?
I can answer that one if you like, Councillor Wilcox. So the Logan Tri Club specifically are one of the wheeled sports that are requesting access to the wheeled sports precinct because they need somewhere to do the bike part of their triathlon training, and they don't have anywhere to do it at the moment without doing it on a road.
All right, so it's for the training, because I was quite intrigued to read it with triathlon.
Yeah, there's no beach there, I can confirm that.
The only other thing that I would say is we actually have a Park Ridge Leisure Centre going in, and I was actually thinking outside the square last night, if there was a proposal to actually move Park Ridge Leisure Centre where Rosia Park is, and you could actually make it more like Chandler, then you could actually have a whole precinct. That was just me thinking outside the box, something to think about.
An excellent discussion for Councillor Karansky's committee, I'm sure. Councillor Karansky, you're up.
Thank you. Okay, now I can mentally shift to the report that's coming up rather than retrospectively looking backwards. So my question pertains to page 37 of 176, which is the Waterford Tamborine Road upgrades. Can you please advise what advocacy work has been conducted this term with regard to Waterford Tamborine Road? I know it was a key pillar of the last advocacy project along with Mount Lindesay Highway and M1 and Salisbury to Beaudesert. Could I have a snapshot of where we're at now?
I'll have to provide you with an update, Councillor Curran. You have to take that on notice. We've been just trying to get the strategies in place to then come up with the advocacy action plan for each of the particular priorities.
But this has been an ongoing strategy, so
Yeah,
I imagine the strategy hasn't been parked to the side
No,
while we're building a new strategy.
It's more a case of me only being here for a short period of time, so I'm unable to provide you with that background information. I don't have it, so we'll have to provide you with an update.
Okay, so I might just highlight then by way of education that Councillor Bannon at the moment is fielding a great myriad of inquiries around Chambers Flat upgrades to Chambers Flat Road, and we recognise that that in large part is being pushed by the development in Yarrabilba. And as we only have one main road in and one main road out, which is the Waterford Tamborine Road, by shifting that population onto council's roads, I think that we're not actually doing the heavy, or the state's not actually doing the heavy lifting with regard to their own infrastructure. And I would hate to think that this has actually fallen off the radar, given that we've got other things that are more pressing at the moment.
Nothing's fallen off the radar that's on the strategy, Councillor Karansky.
So this brings me to City of Choice Phase 3, which is on page 42. As you know, I'm no longer on that advocacy group any longer, but when I left the advocacy group, my understanding was that we were about to liaise with state and federal governments, and the way I read this report, it says that we're actually waiting on advice from federal and state government on their future support for signing a memorandum of understanding. Can you please let me know where that's up to right now?
So since that report has been written, we've actually received a response from the federal government, but no response yet from the state government. The federal government has said that effectively what they've done is outlined all of their existing initiatives, but haven't actually answered the question we asked, which is, did they wish to provide a contact for us to engage with an MOU, to negotiate an MOU? And so we will need to go back to the steering committee that has been put in place for that to advise them of the outcome, and then provide advice to council on what should subsequently happen with City of Choice, given the responses. The response that I'm expecting from the state government could look very similar.
Excellent. I look forward to hearing back from the steering committee. I have every confidence in their ability to drive this project forward, so I look forward to that. Thank you, Councillor Raven, for your indulgence for a second chop.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, Chair. Through you. Ms Purdsnap, so we've got 9 major strategies that the advocacy program is working on, the advocacy team. How many people are in the advocacy team?
Including me, when we have a full complement, there'll be 6.
6 working on 9 major strategies. You're certainly covering a lot of ground, aren't you?
Yes, but when we, in terms of covering major strategies, we would be liaising internally with the subject matter experts. They'd be making their contributions as well to the work that we do. So at the moment, the resources are okay. If there becomes an issue, then obviously we can raise that with council.
No, absolutely. I was in reading the report, and I thank you for the report. What it does was it tells me what you have looked at in the past, but it doesn't quite tell me everything that I wanted to know about where you're up to now. But appreciating that there's 6 members of the team and there's 9 major strategies plus the implementation plans, I get that it's a big stretch for you guys to cover everything in a report. I get that.
That report is really just a reflection of the last 12 months. When we put in place the Advocacy Action Plan, and we will be providing quarterly reports to Council on that, then we'll be able to provide you with that more contemporary, the sort of more contemporary information.
That's one of the points that I was going to raise. So we've got Councillor Karansky and Councillor Bradley, who are both concerned over wording for initiatives in their area and past and present strategies. I'm just wondering whether or not we can receive a spreadsheet style thing, if we can, updating where you're at on each thing, so that councillors can actually be aware of what's happening, and it's in writing, and they can actually point to that with their local residents. I think that's a very important thing, to be able to point to writing and say, this is locked in and this is us moving forward. Is that a possibility?
That's precisely what the quarterly reports will be aiming to achieve. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Are there any further questions? Councillors, I have an amended motion that will be put on the board now, noting for Councillor Karansky in particular that the approval is subject to the removal of the mention to the establishment of the Yarrabilba Family and Community Place and early delivery of the Yarrabilba High School projects under the background information on page 2 of the report. Are you satisfied with that amendment, Councillor? Would someone like to move that motion? Thank you, Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Bannon. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried with the exception of Councillor Bradley and Councillor Karansky.
Sorry, if I can put in the microphone, I'm against the strategy purely for what I stated earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Karansky, how did you vote?
Against.
Thank you. Councillors, thank you very much. There's no further reports for the Director of Innovation and City Transformation. Do you have any GB for us, Dr. Scott?
I do not, Mr Acting Mayor.
Councillors, do you have any GRB for the good doctor? GB, I should say. No, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 5.1, and I'll ask the Director of Strategy and Sustainability, Dave Hanson, and the Manager of Health, Environment and Waste, Michael Asnikar, to come up to speak to the local law amendments to improve regulation of camping on council-controlled or owned land. Before I move into discussion, councillors, do you have any conflicts of interest you'd like to declare? There being none, Michael, you can speak to your report.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Council sometimes receives complaints regarding people who are camping or living in a caravan or motorhome on public land, so primarily footpaths, roads, parks. And whilst many of these can be resolved through negotiation and connecting people to appropriate support services where required, there are occasions where a specific local law provision to require a person to move on would assist the officers with timely resolution of these issues. This item seeks Council's endorsement of a policy direction to amend Council's local laws to specifically prohibit camping on Council-owned or controlled land, except where specifically permitted. This would align Logan City Council with the majority of other South East Queensland councils that have similar provisions and allow it to more effectively regulate this practice and resolve community complaints. So the report today is the commencement of the local law amendment process, and pending Council's endorsement of the policy position, the next steps will involve drafting amendments to the local law, public consultation, state interest checks, and submission of these outcomes to Council for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I've got a question from Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much. Mr Asnikar, I know that your team works really well with people who are in distress, and I know that a lot of people that are camping are actually in financial distress and financial hardship. This change won't be to penalise them in the first instance, it will be to work with them, but just to let them know that camping on public streets and inside cul-de-sacs and things like that just won't be accepted. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the Chair, Councillor Lane, that's exactly right. So our process is very much to seek voluntary compliance and to connect people who are facing difficult circumstances with appropriate support services. This isn't about us wanting to go out and start hitting people with fines or anything like that. the process we undertake is very much about resolving through negotiation and connecting people with the appropriate support services to assist them. This is about we get to the end of a process where, to resolve something in a timely fashion, we have this in our toolbox to use if we need it, and we only use it as a last resort.
Thanks very much. Last night I had the opportunity to stop, and there was a van parked on the side of the road, and there was an extension cord running from a house to the van. And I had the opportunity to stop and have a chat with the people, and as it turns out, someone had lost their job. They were living in their van and they were using the electricity of a friend's property, and I had an occasion to sort of say there are options for you and refer them, but there are a lot of people in those circumstances at the moment. I know that a lot of people have fled from the south up here and are staying with family members in caravans, in reserves, and parking in very unique places. So this will go a long way to securing their safety as well, won't it?
Yes, that's right.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. I have Councillor Wilcox and Murphy.
Thank you. Just curious, I think you just answered this question. So the local laws on council-owned land, does that include our local roads and stuff like that?
Yes, that's right. Councillor Wilcox, yep.
Lovely. So that way we can assist those people that we find that are camping, living in their cars and that sort of thing. Will it also include those that actually are camping in our campsites and stuff for longer periods than they're supposed to and stuff like that, so that we can connect them?
Yeah, so as mentioned in the report, prohibition except where specifically permitted. So council does have a couple of parks where we do allow camping for relatively short periods of time, but if we find somebody in a circumstance where they're there for a prolonged period, again, we can use the local law provisions to resolve any issue that might arise from that. But as I said before, the primary approach will be very much about connecting with support services if that is what is required to assist the person.
Okay, great. And then since 2018, when the council endorsed a suite of amendments, do we know that how many complaints have actually come through?
Yes, from memory, we have had about 6 complaints per year for the last couple of years. So it's not big numbers, and most of those we can resolve through negotiation. However, there are 1 or 2 where the absence of this local law has meant we've found it difficult to actually resolve something in a timely way after all the efforts to resolve it by negotiation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Through the Chair, thank you, Michael, for bringing this report forward. I believe that COVID-19 has played a role in the illegal camping of these people as well. I would like to thank the team for working with myself in Division 12. Since I've been elected, we've been working with one particular lady, and your team has been nothing but fair and just. So I fully support this report, and I'm happy to move it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Murphy has moved the recommendation on the screen. Would someone like to second that motion? Oh, look at all these hands. Councillor Lane. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 5.2, which is the Waste Collection Services Policy and Procedure. Before we move into discussion, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare? There being none, take it away, Michael.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So in preparation for the commencement of the new waste collection contract on the 1st of July this year, 2021, a review's been undertaken of the existing policy that governs council's provision of waste collection services in the city and the associated application of the waste utility charge. And this is to ensure alignment with our policy to the new waste collection contract and services that we'll be offering from July. This report presents the proposed new policy, and the key differences between the proposed new policy and the current policy are as follows. So the current title of the policy, being Waste Service and Waste Management Utility Rates, charge rates, has been simplified to the Waste Collection Services Policy. The format's been changed to reflect Council's new policy template. The reference to the new waste collection contract number has been included, replacing the previous contract number. The policy declares the entire Logan City area as the designated collection area, except for properties which are considered unreasonably remote or unreasonably difficult to access. We've clarified the minimum bin type and size requirements for multiple dwelling premises, making it clear that Council's preference is for on-property collection of bins for multiple unit properties containing more than 10 units. And we've, of course, included the new services that we'll be offering from the 1st of July, in particular the green waste bin service, which are currently being delivered across the city as we speak. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'd just like to note that Councillor Herrmeyer is now with us, but he's only got audio, so he is listening. I have a question from Councillor Bradley.
Through the chair, Councillor Raven. I just am curious, Mr. Asnica, sorry. You said about sounds like the changes are more administrative sort of changes, but there was one change that is quite significant that caught my attention, which was the on-property collection for more than 10 units. Does that mean you have to get indemnity from those units to actually go on to the property?
That's right, through the chair. So part of the arrangement where council's contractor does enter a property requires an indemnity to be provided by the body corporate. That's right.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Are there any further questions? There being none, would someone like to move the report for me? Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Seconded by Councillor Stemp. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Herrmeyer, can you please indicate how you're voting? We couldn't hear you because we muted you. Try again. You should be an IT girl, Councillor Lane. Can you try again, Councillor Herrmeyer, see if we can hear you now? Four. There we go. We got you. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 5.3, which is a request for exemption from Council's waste collection service. Before I move into discussions, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare? I note that this is a confidential report, and it is considered necessary to take the discussion of this report into a closed session as it involves discussion of information that is not yet publicly available and relates to the financial operation of Council. Councillors, you do not need to go into confidential unless you wish to have discussions on the report. Does anyone wish to move me into confidential? There being none, I'll take the report as read and ask for someone to move the motion that is on the screen. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Seconded by Councillor Stemp. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is, Councillor Herrmeyer, how do you vote? For. Councillor Lane, how do you vote?
Against.
Councillor Hall, how do you vote?
Against.
All other councillors were in favour. Oh, sorry, and Councillor?
Against.
Against for Councillor Bannon. All other councillors were in favour, including Councillor Herrmeyer. Councillors, that is the end of the reports for the Health, Environment and Waste Manager. Michael, do you have any general business for us? Councillors, do you have any general business for Michael? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Bradley?
Definitely got a storm out
For those
there.
playing at home, it is raining. Everybody's heads turn around in here like they're got a little stick.
Through the chair, Councillor Raven, thank you. I'm just curious about the green waste bin. How are you going with numbers for that at the moment, and which division is the highest?
That's right, weekly updates. Yeah. So it's going well. The delivery of the bins commenced last Thursday, and I haven't heard any issues so far. So the distribution's starting to occur across the city, and I believe at last count Division 1 had the most requests, closely followed by Division 10.
Do you want to put that on the record, Councillor Bennett? Noted. But turn your microphone on so the whole world can hear you. Councillors, the next report I have is item 6.1. Before I move to that, we've got no reports from the Development Assessment Branch. We have Adam Avalos here on behalf of Stephen Ball, who is unavailable today. Do you have any general business for Adam? Adam, do you have any general business for us?
No.
There you go. Excellent contribution to committee. You can go back to work. Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you.
I'll now call we'll now move on to report 6.1, which is the final Logan Central Civic and Community Precinct Plan, which means you can never bring another one before us ever again, Dave. I'll ask the Economic Development and Strategy Manager, Dave Radich, to speak to his report. Before I do that, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest that they would like to declare? There being a none, you can take it away, Dave.
Through the Chair. Logan Civic and Community Precinct Plan, a plan forged through community consultation and the vision of the new divisional councillor. The plan in front of you, councillors, has a staged approach, which is short, medium and long term. Parts of the plan are funded, parts of the plan are not funded. But what is most important about this plan is it gives a clear vision that is, again, shaped by the new divisional councillor and by the community. We went out for community consultation on this plan in November.
That's correct. The period between November 2020 and January 2021.
Through that consultation period, we received a series of feedback. The majority of it was positive. Some of the feedback, particularly from the Brothers Leagues Club, resulted in us changing the plan, but the majority of the feedback was positive. So now it's time to roll up the sleeves and start delivering for the precinct. One of the key pieces of infrastructure that we're looking to deliver in the precinct is a ring road which is a one-way ring road with parking to make sure that the community can enjoy Logan Gardens, which is a beautiful parkland in Logan, which is often missed because of the surrounding housing. So we've got the precinct plan and the recommendations are for endorsement, but also a recommendation that is for an EOI to bring a coffee shop or a coffee van to the area to further activate the parkland. That is all.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, and thank you to your team. Coming down to Logan Central Plaza and talking to residents with me in the mobile office as well as separately, I think that residents felt like they had some investment into this plan, and while I didn't agree with all of the recommendations, there is a lot of enthusiasm from people that you dared to dream for them, and I'm really impressed with that, and I want to say thank you. Moving forward, I know that the community will want to have more input into it. Logan Gardens is obviously a home-locked major park, but coming up with the ring road is a great opportunity for more people to enjoy the park with more parking, and also coming up with the idea of actually placing a temporary shelter so that we can have a coffee van to see whether or not that kicks off is also a good thing. I know that council staff will like it, and obviously Logan Police will, but mum and dads taking their kids to the park will also hopefully benefit from that, and come summer the business will benefit from those people being in the park. So thank you very much for your efforts, it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Very well spoken, because my only question was, how does the divisional councillor feel about it? And it sounds like you're very much in support. I'd also like to echo the sentiments that Councillor Lane has expressed and just say how excited I am to see what's going to happen in this park. So when it's fully developed and the vision is realised, it really will become a central park for Logan Central, with all sorts of amenity residential units, all looking over this beautiful parkland, so people feel that it's a safe place to go and play, spend time with their family and celebrate their cultural celebrations and other celebrations. And as we see more and more events coming into this part of the city, I'm very excited to watch the community come in and enjoy an asset that really is a bit of a hidden gem. We want to get rid of that, especially now that the water park's in there, so that it's just a gem that shines and makes those places that are north, east, south and west of Logan jealous of how good we've got it here. Councillors, are there any further questions or comments on this report? There being none, Councillor Lane has moved. Councillor Murphy has seconded. Can you please show me who is in favour by raising your hand? Thank you very much. That is carried unanimously. Councillor Heremiah, how do you vote? For. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. Councillors, that is the last report for the Economic Development and Strategy Manager. Do you have any general business for Dave? Councillor Lane and Councillor Bradley.
Thanks very much, through you, Chair. Mr Director, just a quick question. When Berrimba Industrial Estate went in, the expectation would be that heavy vehicles would be moving potentially along the main thoroughfares like Wembley Road, rather than through, say, Dewars Road or 3rd Avenue. Is there any way in which we can look at those businesses and where their trucks are actually tracking? Over the course of the last week or so, we've had multiple complaints that earth-moving vehicles are taking big loads up Dewars Road, and I think, given that it's a school road, that if there's a way in which council can stop that from happening, that's probably a good positive for the local community. Can I leave that in your hands? Is that okay?
Through the Chair, Councillor Lane, sure can. So the construction management plan process that the Development Assessment Branch has carriage of tries to make sure that construction traffic isn't accessing residential streets inappropriately. So there's that mechanism to control it. As the vehicles get bigger and you're into that B-double style route, the road infrastructure planning team, I think, is the branch that has carriage of giving those approvals in association with DTMR. So 2 ways that I can take that forward for you. Happy to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. Through the Chair, Councillor Raven. Just in light of the Logan Central Master Plan being reviewed, I'm just wondering, and I'm curious if I can ask a question of the Director, please. Oh, that's a big storm going on at the moment. Is it possible for Springwood Master Plan to be reviewed in terms of having it dedicated purely to Springwood, not Slacks Creek and Springwood? And also in light of, we've actually done a master plan for Springwood Park, which also has a one-way road and parking both sides. Interesting, same concept. I'm just wondering, because that's in the catchment as well, is it possible for that to be reviewed at all?
Through the Chair, yes. The Springwood local area plans had a fairly turbulent history in recent times, and it's been, I guess you could say, it's been on hold since the last community consultation and state government first interest checks, I think it was. It's only gone to first. So the reason for that at the moment is we're waiting to see where the Springwood busway extension may or may not land, because it doesn't seem sensible to advance and bring back the Springwood local plan to this group of councillors for endorsement until we know what the impact is. And the impacts are suggested to be everywhere from nothing to something. So, and if the busway was extended, then there may be knock-on implications for Dennis Road, Cinderella Drive, Fitzgerald Ave, in terms of moving traffic on that eastern side of the M1. So absolutely, it will come back to this group for a refresh and an endorsement.
And I'm very grateful that you have elaborated on that. So separate to this committee, I know I'll raise it in the next committee. I have been, last year there was a council resolution where I asked for TMR to give us a briefing about the M1, the busway, etc. Normally, as councillors, we've historically had confidential briefings where we could do the planning behind the scenes for exactly what you're just referring to. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened this term. I have, and I believe that the manager has actually written to TMR as well, and we're yet to get a response, but as in a confirmation that they will give us a briefing. I've also met with the state member, trying to find out what is going on as well, and I've asked him twice now and still none the wiser, apart from I do know that the service road, whilst it may, the landscaping will be removed, the service road will still remain. That's all I do know. So, yeah, I will ask questions in the next committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Do you think the uncertainty around where the busway will end could also be part of why they're not getting as much activity from like advocacy around that? Do you think they're related?
I think they're unrelated, but because that has never ever actually been mentioned.
Okay. It just seems, yeah, that if, like as Dave Hanson was saying in relation to the reboot of the plan, until you know exactly where everything's going to be, it's hard to know what to ask for because it could change pretty rapidly. Dave, do you have any GB for councillors?
Through the Chair, yes I do. So last month was Small Business Month, and LOED, the Logan Office of Economic Development, was heavily involved in supporting small businesses. So I just wanted to give the council a snapshot of what's happening in that space, because there's certainly a lot of economic development activity that we are getting through the team. So last month, 8 events were hosted by LOED, including the Logan Manufacturing Network event, and we also did a joint chambers and LOED networking event. We also held an event about what you need to know if you want to operate a tourism business in Logan. So a lot of these events are aimed at existing and emerging industries and how we can help small business, medium business in Logan continue to grow. We also had a suppliers event. So this is how to do business with council. And just to give you a bit of a shape of that event, so it was a joint event between ED&S and the procurement team, which sits under K.O. Sullivan in Admin branch. So we had 100 people attend that event, and we had 100 people on the wait list. So it's a hugely popular event, and because of the size and the scale of interest, we're now going to have that event more regularly. So looking at having quarterly events. We also hosted the joint Logan Chamber LOED networking event with the Small Business Commissioner. And overall, we have supported a range of events throughout Small Business Month. So we're really here for small business, small and medium business, helping them grow. As you know, the kind of mantra of the new economic development strategy vision is to help small business and medium businesses grow within the city. So our team is busy. We have unprecedented a number of inquiries that we're fielding, and it's really positive to hear that a lot of the inquiries aren't just people looking to invest new in the city, but they're about existing businesses that have outgrown their footprint, often wanting double the size of the warehouse or doubling the size of their workforce. So that's really positive. Everything's looking very good for the City of Logan. And a lot of the businesses are talking to us. They're saying, we're hearing about all this great investment in the city through the media, through our social media channels, and now they want to meet with these businesses that are investing in the city. So we have historically had joint networking events with the Chamber of Commerce's, but now I think we're going to move to a slightly different format where these businesses can meet each other in more of an informal manner, because what they're saying is they want to do business with companies that are in Logan at the moment. So again, when we reflect on our economic development strategy vision, it was really to make sure that we can grow businesses from within Logan, so help our businesses grow, and it's really positive to hear the feedback that we're getting from the industry. So I thought I'd share that with the council.
Thanks, Dave. Keep up the great work. No further questions from councillors. then I will declare the meeting closed at 9:49. The City Infrastructure Committee will begin at 9:59. Thank you.